I actually have something in common with Aaron Rodgers now, Tom. Both of us have been told we're not allowed to go on the Pat McAfee show. So I am at Aaron Rodgers McAfee level.
Hey, your name has been brought up on the Pat McAfee show before.
I know. My mom's the one who told me I can't go on there, but we both have been told we're not allowed on McAfee show if we stay. Aaron in New York, me here in Denver. So
yeah. Well, you gotta listen to the moms, so I get it.
Word to your mom, came to drop bomb.
Yeah. Was it a couple days ago now? Just because I can't keep track of time anymore. That it was reported that it was likely Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, they were going to be parting ways. That was
Super Bowl Sunday. Super Bowl Sunday. They're like, slow news day in the NFL. Let's drop this Aaron Rodgers news.
It was because you went live earlier. Now, okay, yes,
I did. I was like, okay.
Yes. So what winds up happening is Aaron Rodgers and the Jets that's the kibosh on things. Now, for today/yesterday, what came out was apparently the Jets had met with Aaron Rodgers and they had a conversation that if they were going to be working together this upcoming season, there were a couple of ground rules that were going to be established.
Sure.
Right? The first was going to be that he can't go on Pat McAfee no more.
No.
Can't do it. Can't go on Pat McAfee anymore. He says he can't do outside media, right? Including the paid, because he was paid to go on McAfee too, right? I know that was a thing like a few years ago that was very controversial, but no, it's pretty standard for very large, ESPN-backed programs that they're going to get money for guests. But in terms of Rodgers, like, I'm sure that did not go over well, the first one. The second one being that all mandatory practices. So this was a big storyline heading into this past season that he left because he went to Egypt and he was missing time. And
which is in the documentary, Enigma.
Yep. Enigma. Okay, Chad. It's true. So that's already there. And I just love the consensus that comes after it of like, obviously Rodgers said no to this.
Yeah.
Rodgers told us, was like, yeah, no, this is not going to happen. But I'm curious on what your thoughts is. So the Jets organization to sit him down, obviously getting new leadership, and getting new head coach, and Aaron Glenn. And so now it's just like, hey, buddy, if you're going to stick along for this ride, this is how you're going to do it.
Yeah. I don't think it was so much about them having like a huge problem with Rodgers going on McAfee once a week versus like they want to set a tone and they needed to know that Aaron Rodgers was going to buy into the way that they were going to do things moving forward.
Sure.
And I don't even think that's necessarily like a Aaron Rodgers specific request. I think it's like they're in this weird spot with a veteran quarterback who's declining. You still might think he has something to offer, but like a quarterback who's had as much success as Rodgers, who's been in the league for as long as Rodgers, they're going to want to kind of do things their way.
Sure.
And that, like Brady, I think went to Tampa because they agreed they were going to do shit Brady's way. When Peyton Manning came to Denver, they just said, whatever you want to do, Peyton, like, let's do it. And I think the Jets didn't succeed with that, with Rodgers. So they're like, this is how it's going to be. If you're cool with that, then let's talk about what it looks like for you coming back. And Rodgers was like, that doesn't sound like fun to me, guys. Not at all.
I mean, just in terms of what's worked in the past, right? And is when they got Aaron Rodgers, they brought everybody, right? They got Alan Lazard. They paid him a lot of money as a free agent. They brought in Randall Cobb, right? They brought in Billy Turner. Like, they brought in all his friends, Nathaniel Hackett. They bring in all his friends, and obviously the injury happens, and it's like, okay, well, let's just wait another year, and then we can implement this. And this past season went like it did, right? So you're firing your head coach, firing your GM. And so I'm happy. And if anything, if I'm a Jets fan, I'm thinking that, hey, maybe this is a step in the right direction. And it's not 100%. Even because they're moving on from Aaron Rodgers, but it's exactly what you said of like, hey, like Aaron Glenn, who has been highly touted as a great leader of men. We talked about like Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, and maybe Aaron Glenn in the head coaching role might just be more familiar with it. Not saying Ben Johnson's going to be bad, but here just say like, hey, we're putting our foot down, even if it is with a future Hall of Fame quarterback who has gotten, things that he has wanted, whether it was in Green Bay or whether it was in New York. And now just moving forward, hey, this is the plan. This is the vision that we have for this organization. And you can be part of it. But like you said, you're going to have to buy in all the way.
Yeah, you want that from your head coach and your GM. Like, you want them to have like a plan, and you want them to know who they are. Even if it doesn't work out, I would rather, as a fan, go down that way than I would just compare it to the Nathaniel Hackett way, right? Where like the difference of when Sean Payton came in here in Denver versus like Nathaniel Hackett, it was like, okay, this guy, maybe we don't like how he says everything or his approach to everything, but he's got a fucking plan. And that's what he's going to do.
Yes, but it's a good point that you make, because I feel like ultimately you want to know. And you mentioned Sean Payton. I think that's a great example, because when he came in, I remember like he was ripping the Broncos organization about how they handled Russell Wilson, right? It was like they made a show of it in the offseason, and it's just like, oh, look at this big move we made, and not focus on the actual football. And again, like the way that comes off is like, ooh, okay, that's a little harsh and it's a little abrasive. However, with that cap hit, with a rookie QB, they were still able to make the postseason. So I'll take harsh talk, if it comes with the results.
I think that's the practical approach. That's probably the way Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji approached it. I'm sure the conversation was fine. And like, people want to shit on Aaron Rodgers, I think, for the wrong reasons. I think he's pretty practical when it comes to those sorts of things and self-aware. And what wants to be spun is that Rodgers goes on McAfee once a week and he says these horrible things about his team and his teammates, and he never does that. He might say like one like little thing that you're like, ooh, maybe that's not the exact right way to say it, but historically, Aaron Rodgers' teammates love him. I think like the big thing was the throw this year that got, was it picked off late or incomplete, where he wanted the Mike Williams to run. Was Mike Williams, right? That was the one big thing. But like, for the most part, when he goes on McAfee, it's not like he's throwing teammates under the bus. It can be a distraction, but not because like Aaron Rodgers is being horrible to his teammates. And I think that's what people want to spin this into, is like, oh, they had to get rid of the guy, the cancer from the locker room, saying this shit on McAfee every week. And I don't think that's true either.
I think it's the distraction element, right? Because Aaron Rodgers will go on McAfee, he'll make a comment, it'll make waves, and then it's detracting from what's actually going on in the locker room.
And if Aaron Rodgers was still Aaron Rodgers, they would probably be like, we're ready to rock with you. But he's 40, he's going to be 41 or 42 next 41. Year.
Again, you go back and look at I've watched Aaron Rodgers his entire career.
Yeah.
And besides a handful of folks that were like very much anti-Aaron Rodgers, and like Greg Jennings like hated Aaron Rodgers afterwards, and he talks smack about him all the time, right? You'd have folks that go like, no, like that's my guy. And I'm sure that Rodgers like had his guys, but he was also very particular on the way that he wanted the team to function and run, especially when it comes to his wide receivers, which you saw more of not only in the last years with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, but also, of course, with the Jets as well. So I think it's the old saying of winning solves a lot of problems.
Yeah, 100%.
When you are winning, when you are playing at an elite level, I think you can demand that kind of play and style from your teammates.
Yeah.
When those are not happening, or when the winning is not happening, it's going to be viewed with a different lens and maybe not taken as well.
I think like with the Jets, Rodgers didn't have the history there for blind loyalty, right? Like if you're going into the Packers and Rodgers there, it's like there's no questioning anything about like who he is, what his word means. But there was something weird that happened from year 1 to year 2 with Rodgers, right? Like when he first got there, it was like him and Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson, they all seemed to be like on the same page of like, all right. It's like he connected with the two young stars on both sides of the ball. And then like this last year, it seemed like there was a disconnect between him and Garrett Wilson behind closed doors, right? And then there was like Wilson possibly wanting to request a trade. Now that Rodgers not going to be there, it seems more like Garrett Wilson's going to stay. So I think there was some disconnect with some players. I don't know why. Like we probably never will. But I think like when you're losing and you had to rehab an entire year through an injury and things didn't go well then, and they didn't go well when you came back, like everything starts to crack at that point.